on to people simply because you love them, while ignoring the fact that being with them is slowly destroying you. Wake up. Love is not a lifetime contract to tolerate pain. You can love someone deeply and still have enough sense to say, you are not good for me. I think one of the hardest things to accept is that sometimes loving someone is not enough to make a relationship healthy. You can love someone, you can care about them deeply, you can remember all the good things about them, you can know their heart, you can have beautiful memories together and still know that they are not good for you. And that's a painful truth because sometimes we think that if the love is real, we have to stay. But that's not always true. I think many of us have stayed in situations longer than we should have simply because we loved someone. We kept hoping, we kept forgiving, we kept waiting for things to get better, we kept remembering who they used to be, and sometimes we were not holding on to the relationship, we were holding on to the memories. You were holding on to the potential. You were holding on to the version of the person you wish they could become. But you have to be honest with yourself. Who is this person now? How do you feel around them? Do you feel safe? Do you feel respected? Do you feel valued? Do you feel like yourself? Or are you constantly anxious, constantly questioning yourself, constantly walking on eggshells, constantly trying to earn the love you should not have to beg for? Because sometimes we love people who are not good for our peace. And admitting that does not mean they are completely bad people. It does not mean you have to hate them. It does not mean everything about the relationship was fake. It simply means that love and compatibility are not always the same thing. Someone can be a good person and still not be good for you. Someone can love you and still hurt you. Someone can have good intentions and still cause damage. Someone can be important to you and still be someone you need to let go of. That is where maturity comes in because sometimes the question is not, do I love this person? The question is this relationship healthy for me? Those are two completely different questions. You can love someone and still know that you are becoming a version of yourself you don't like around them. Maybe you are constantly angry. Maybe you are constantly insecure. Maybe you have stopped trusting yourself. Maybe you are always trying to prove your worth. Maybe you have become someone you don't recognize. And if loving someone requires you to lose yourself, you have to ask yourself whether that is really love you should continue holding on to. Because love should not require you to abandon yourself. You don't have to stay in a relationship just because you once promised you would. You don't have to stay because you are already invested years. You don't have to stay because people will judge you. You don't have to stay because you are afraid you will never find someone else. And you definitely don't have to stay because you are hoping someone will eventually become the person you need them to be. Sometimes leaving is not proof that you never loved them. Sometimes leaving is proof that you finally realize you have to love yourself too. And I think that's something we forget. We talk so much about loving other people, but what about loving yourself enough to walk away from what is destroying you? What about loving yourself enough to say, I don't want this life? What about loving yourself enough to choose peace over familiarity? Because sometimes the hardest person to leave is not the person you don't love. It is the person you love deeply but know you cannot continue with. And that is why letting go can hurt so much. You are not only grieving the person, you are grieving the future you imagined with them. You are grieving the plans, the dreams, the version of life you thought you would have. And that's okay. That's okay. You can grieve someone and still know that leaving was the right decision. You can miss someone and still not go back. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still decide they no longer belong to your life. Those things can exist together. Love does not always mean access. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. And missing someone does not mean you made a wrong decision by leaving. Sometimes you have to accept that the person you love is not the person you can build a healthy life with. And that's not always anyone's fault. Okay, sometimes people grow in different directions. Sometimes their values don't align with yours. Sometimes their behavior keeps hurting you. Sometimes the relationship brings out the worst in both of you. And sometimes you simply have to accept that love cannot fix everything. Love cannot replace respect. Love cannot replace trust. Love cannot replace emotional safety. Love cannot replace compatibility. And love cannot force someone to change. So if you find yourself in a situation where you constantly have to choose between loving someone and keeping your peace, maybe it's time to ask yourself a harder question. What am I losing by staying? Because sometimes the cost of staying is much harder than the pain of leaving. You lose your confidence, your joy, your identity, your peace, your time, and sometimes you lose yourself. And no relationship should cost you your entire identity. So if you love someone, but deep down you know they are not good for you, don't be ashamed to admit it. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to erase every good memory. You don't have to pretend you never cared. You can simply accept the truth, okay? I love you, but I cannot keep losing myself trying to love you. Sometimes the most painful goodbye is the one you know you need to say. Because you can love someone with your whole heart and still choose to live with a little piece of yourself you have left.